Today we're going to talk about weeping. There are a lot of times and circumstances where we may weep. It could be tears of joy. It could be when God's healing our heart. It could be when He's depositing compassion in us. When His Spirit's coming upon us. It could be when there's an injustice against us or someone else. But there are many times in life that we weep. And weeping is a good thing. But today we're going to talk about the moments that we weep. Can we turn the volume down a little bit? The moments that we weep when we're yielding to what the Spirit's doing in our life. There's a certain time and season where we may weep in the process of laying down the things that we had expected in order to allow God to do the things that He intends. Laying down our own intentions and letting God pick up His intentions. There's a time where we may weep, and the weeping does not mean we're in the wrong place. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing the wrong thing. It's a process of yielding to the Spirit of God. So let's turn to John 11. It says, "Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped His feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to Him, saying, 'Lord, he who you love is ill.' But when Jesus heard it, He said, 'This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it.' Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when He heard that Lazarus was ill, He stayed 2 days in the place where he was." I don't know about you, but that makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. It says Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus, and when He heard that Lazarus was sick, He did nothing for 2 days. He stayed where he was at for 2 days. When He knew Lazarus needed Him, when He knew Mary and Martha were calling out to Him, He remained where He was for 2 days. Sometimes the purposes and the love of Jesus don't make sense. Sometimes His purposes and His timing is not our timing. But like He said in verse 4, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so the Son of God may be glorified through it. He's telling the disciples there's a purpose behind what He's doing. There's a purpose behind how He's operating in love. He's wanting to cultivate something. It goes on in verse 7. Then after this, He said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to Him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you're going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of the world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." After saying these things, He said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awake him." The disciples said to Him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." Now Jesus had spoken of His death, but they thought they meant taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, "Lazarus has died, and for your sake I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us go, that we may die with him." So Jesus is speaking figuratively about Him falling asleep. The disciples think He's actually just taking a nap. And He says, "No, I got to spell it out for you. He's actually dead. Lazarus is dead." We've all been in places where it could be a dream we had, an expectation we had, plans we had that died. And Jesus says the most interesting thing. He says, "Lazarus has died, and for your sake, I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe." There are times he leads us places we didn't expect to go because there's a certain measure of faith, there's a certain measure of belief that comes through the hard times that we may not get when everything is just going as we planned. He said, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe. But he says, but let us go to him. Verse 17. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. They're weeping. It's been 4 days since putting him in the tomb. They're weeping. There are people consoling them, and they hear that Jesus is coming. And we'll see in a moment, both Martha and Mary had the exact same question. They do different things, but they had the exact same question. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, her response in the midst of her sorrow was to run to him. In the depth of her pain, she ran to him. And she said, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. She had a question. She knew that if Jesus had been there, her brother would not have died. She had the faith to say, if Jesus had come earlier, I know he could have healed my brother. I know he could have fixed the problem. I know that he could have upheld the dream. I know that he could have accomplished my purpose. But she goes to him with that question, that aching of her heart, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Yet she did not stop there. She said, but even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. And they have this dialogue about resurrection in the last day. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will not die. And then asks her a direct question. Do you believe this? Do you believe I am? Do you believe I'm the resurrection and the life? Even in this midst of pain, even in the midst of heartache, even in the midst of plans that didn't go as according to schedule, he asked her, do you believe this? And she said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. Verse 28. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in the spirit and greatly troubled. This is a very interesting moment. And I believe it shows us sometimes our response when things don't go as expected. Sometimes I believe what Jesus desires is that in the sorrow, we run straight to Jesus and we bring him our questions, we bring him our heartache, we hash through it with him. He's not afraid to walk with us through those questions. And Martha went and she brought those questions to Jesus. Mary waited back, and she came when Jesus called her. Because you know, Jesus doesn't want us to stay in our sorrow. He calls us out of our sorrow. She comes, she falls at his feet, and she says verbatim the first sentence that Martha said. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And Jesus sees her weeping, and it says he was deeply moved in the spirit, and yet he was greatly troubled. How could he be both? I believe he was deeply moved in the spirit because he weeps with those who weep. And I believe he was greatly troubled because the circumstances had brought strain to his relationship with Mary, whom he loved. Mary and Martha had the same question. Martha brought the question and then began to discuss with Jesus the things she was wrestling with. Mary came, she said the exact same thing, and that was it. In my opinion, she came with a heart blaming Jesus, not seeking Jesus. And Jesus, in that moment, he's deeply moved in his spirit because he weeps with those who weep, though he's greatly troubled because he doesn't desire that even the worst of circumstances would tear us from him or harm our relationship with him. He doesn't desire that our sorrow would separate us from him. He doesn't desire that we would stay in our sorrow, but that we'd run to him even when it makes no sense. Even when we say, God, this doesn't look like love. Goes on in verse 34. And he said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? He desired that they would see the glory of God. He desires that we would see the glory of God. He says, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? I believe that implies that if we don't believe, if we don't walk in faith, even in the midst of sorrow, we can miss the glory of God and what he's wanting to do. We can be so fixated on the sorrow that we never run to him. We never allow him to fulfill all that he desires to fulfill, and we miss the opportunity to see his glory. The very thing that God is desiring to cultivate in his disciples and in Mary and Martha and all who were about to see what he was going to do. Verse 41, so they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you have sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Sometimes weeping is a part of obedience. The majority of pivotal, life-changing decisions that I've made in my life, I've wept over. The ones that God spoke that were different than what I expected. I've never wept over my own plans. I think I usually have pretty good plans. But I tend to weep over the things that God does when they don't align with what my expectations were. At one point, I was working at Grand Canyon University in the athletics department. I thought I was on track to pursue my dream job. And God said, "This isn't your dream job." And he began closing the door. I wept. On the floor, I wept. I thought I knew what I wanted. And then what he called me into after that made no financial sense compared to the situation I was in. Yet he invited me into something deeper. He invited me into something greater. And you know what happened? A year or two later, I realized I didn't want the track that I was on. In his grace, he broke my dream because he knew better than I did what I was made for, what I was designed for, what he had in store for me. After college, I wanted to go to Morocco, and God closed that door, and he said, "I want you to go to India." I wept. I didn't want to go to India. When I was in Arizona before moving out to Washington, things were going quite well. I had a great plan. He said, "No, I'm inviting you into something greater." And I wept. When I was up here for a few months, then he began shifting pieces for me to step into Anthony's role as lead pastor. I wept because I still was holding on to my plans. I thought I'll just come up to Washington for a couple years. Then I can go back to what I had in store, my dreams, my plans. God said, "No, I'm inviting you into something greater." And I wept. Weeping doesn't necessarily mean we're in the wrong place or doing the wrong thing. Sometimes it's a part of yielding what I expected to what God intends to do. Yet looking back, each one of those steps, as he brought me from place to place, had a crucial purpose in the journey. Not one season that I said yes to Jesus was wasted. Not one segment was for nothing. Even the segments that I thought were a lot shorter than I expected or that I really wanted to continue doing, I look back and recognize his purpose in that season. But here's the thing. After every one of those moments where I've wept in obedience to the Lord, do you know what followed? When all was said and done, do you know what followed? Joy. Every one of them. I was weeping because I didn't think there was actually hope on the other side, and yet when I got to the other side, I realized God had so much more in store than I would have ever thought, than I would have ever chosen for myself. That on the other side of that weeping that comes through obedience, there is great joy that God wants to bring you in. In Psalm 30, it talks about weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes in the morning. In Luke 6, it says, "Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh." Restoring beauty for ashes, laughter for sorrow. Sometimes it's a matter of me weeping to let go of what I had in mind so that God can do what he has in mind. And the humbling recognition that, have I actually given my life away? When I came to Jesus, did I actually give my life away? Because when we've actually given our life away, then when God changes things, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean it's not hard. But we're not holding on to our plan. We're not holding on to our kingdom. We're yielding to him and saying, "God, take me wherever you want to go. Do whatever you would do with my life." Even if there's weeping that may last the night, I know there's joy on the other side because I get to walk with my Father. I get to walk with a good Father who knows the end from the beginning, who has good purposes, where I know I'll look back, even in the challenge, even in the sorrow, even in the difficulty, and recognize, I'm so glad I said yes to Jesus. I'm so glad I was willing to go where he called me. Go ahead and stand with me. I want to encourage people today, it's okay to weep. That when God brings you in those seasons and he calls you to challenging things or he calls you to unexpected things, it's healthy to weep. It's that process of yielding and humbling ourselves to him. So if you're at a point where you've recognized God may be leading you somewhere and you feel like that's the last thing I would want to do, I encourage you, there's no greater place you could be. And there may be tears. There may be hardship. There may be a process of humbling ourselves. But he is so good. Even in the hardships, even in the pain, he desires to develop, just like with the disciples in John 11, so that they may believe. Even when God's love doesn't make sense, even when it's not in our timing, we can trust that even in our weeping over the things we had expected, that he has joy on the other side. So God, I thank you that our trust and our confidence is in you. I think that we can enter each new season with the confidence of knowing that you have good things in store, things that we can't even see yet. That you're holding details we haven't even figured out yet. You're holding pieces we don't even know we need yet. But God, we want to be in that place where we so believe you, that you are the resurrection and the life. And we can go after where you're calling, knowing that you are a resurrection God. There may be things in this room that people have laid down that have died, plans or dreams or purposes that you may very well resurrect sometime in the future, but even if you didn't, you're still worthy. You're still worthy. We exalt your name, Jesus. We stand humbly before you, knowing that our life is not our own. We offer ourselves as a living sacrifice, trusting that even when you lead us places that cause us to weep, that we can be confident that you're a good Father. In Jesus' name, amen. Before you leave, I want to invite you